Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Liz, thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. How are you this morning?
All right, I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited. You, as a coach, you have helped so many people, and I love what you're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
But I want to get to know you. So I think the best way that I've always gotten to know people is to ask them about their childhood. So tell me, where did you grow up, and who influenced you even before the age of 10?
That's a great question. Well, I have a funny segue into that, which is that, of course, my last name is Wolfe, but when I was 5 years old, my mother decided, now this was 1969, and you can do the math real quick. And this was a time when people were really questioning what were they doing with their lives. It was the sort of hippie generation, as it were. And my mother decided that the traditional role of being a housewife, and even though I had two older sisters, she wanted to do something different. So she went with my father at the time and bought a 148-acre farm, which was outside of Pittsburgh. So it was within commuting distance from my father, who was actually a Westinghouse engineer. And they bought this farm both for her, and he looked at this as a way to save his marriage, basically, which didn't work, by the way. And because she decided she preferred farming to just being a mom and a housewife and all that, and so she started buying sheep. So we got up to about 300 sheep at the peak of our sheep queendom, I should say. So at some point, about 3 years later, my dad moved actually back to Pittsburgh. I had a very stable experience with my father. He was there for us. He always supported us. We went every single weekend of my entire childhood up to age 18. We went to his house on the weekends, took ballet lessons, went to the museum, did those kinds of things.
Nice.
And then I would leave that little utopia and I would go back to Western Pennsylvania, a place called West Newton, and work on the farm. So how did the entrepreneurial part come about? Was we were in need of money. A lot of people start entrepreneurial gigs because they need money, pay the bills. And
those keep coming up, don't they?
Yes. It's not like one of those things where you could just pay it once and then it's just gone forever, right? That was quite an eye-opening thing for me when I became old enough to buy a house, and I was like, wait, it's not just paying off the mortgage, there's other stuff that comes along with that. So we started our own cottage industry, selling anything that related to sheep, wool, spinning wool, creating quilts, any kind of wool batting. We did sheepskin coats. We did lamb, sold lamb meat. And we would go to festivals and fairs, just like you see other people doing now. That was me. But I was doing all that when I was 10 years old. I mean, even before that. And so that was a big change for us as a family, for sure.
So around that age, who would you say, besides the obviously you if you had trouble sleeping, you just count sheep, right? But I'm just kidding on that one. I'm sorry, I kind of fell into that one myself. So,
Great. That's great.
but when you consider who influenced you around that time, obviously your mom had a big influence and the people around you, but your mom didn't do all this sheep stuff by herself, so there had to be other people around, people she learned from and so forth. Was there anyone that you recall that made an impact on you?
Yeah, great question. Well, my mother's side of the family is Italian. So there was a lot of female, actually, my grandmother, my grandfather wasn't around, my grandmother, my aunts, and my some uncles, and they would come, and my cousins, and they would all come, and it was like summer camp for free, only you
Mm.
work. And so everybody, everybody would come to the farm in the summer, and there, frankly, were a lot of really wonderful moments of sitting on the back porch or riding horses, just cooking, a lot of food,
Mm.
gardening. So there's a lot of really wonderful things, and then there was a lot of work that came along, and so there was often also some fighting that happened because it was kind of the thing. But my grandmother always came, and she would she had a worked her whole life, but she had very rigorous ideas around cleanliness. And if
Mm.
you've ever spent any time on a farm, there's a lot of sloppy stuff. So
Oh yeah.
she would come, and she would provide that strength, that stake in the ground, where she would clean the kitchen, she would cook all the meals for everybody. She would, kind of get in there, and because that was her way of dealing with what was sometimes quite chaotic, actually. There
I
was
can
always
imagine.
getting out, or the pigs were whatever, or they were dying. There was always stuff happening. So she was a really important person to come and bring that stability into our
Mm.
world. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So grandma, huh?
Yep.
Let me ask you, what would you say if you had to say this way because of grandma? What would that one, maybe two or three things would be?
Well, first of all, my grandmother was very the opposite of my mother, very careful with money.
Mm.
And so she never really criticized our mom or anything, but she would always be the one to say, now here's how you balance your checkbook. Here's
Mm.
she once loaned me, I think, $500. Actually, that was later. I that was my first business. She loaned me $500 to get started in my first business, which, by the way, didn't go very well. And
Mm.
then afterwards, I decided to pay her back. And once I got out, was a little older, and so I would send her $50 checks, and she
Right.
would take the checks, and unbeknownst to me, she bought stock with those checks. She actually
Nice.
invested it in stocks for me. So eventually I got the money back, which is a very, very generous thing to do. But she told me the lesson of, why that was important and how to invest in these particular stocks. And so she, again, she taught us how to cook, and she was a very frugal person. And
Mm.
she was she was young, she was married and right before the Depression.
Mm.
So she really learned to manage, and she really helped that kind of. So a sense of responsibility, definitely.
It made me think when you said she grew up around the Depression because everyone thought of money differently than we even do today, right? And you said she's frugal, so that makes a lot of sense. And
Mhm.
she probably brought that to you as well. One of the things that she did, and I think that a lot of people don't do it, is gave you responsibility to pay her back. But she didn't need the money. That was a
No,
gift to you. And then she gave you even a bigger gift. And
yes,
one of the things that I've done with my own kids is they would say, "Hey, Dad, can you loan me money?" I'm like, "For what?" And then they're like, "Oh, I want to buy this." I'm like, "Well, let's go look at your piggy bank. What do you have?" And then they would say, "Oh, okay, I only have $30, but this thing costs 80." I said, "Okay." when you get half, I'll go in with you. So I would make them still work for it, and then I would give them that. So I can see how your grandma did that, in effect, to teach you the balance of paying things back, because a lot of people never learn that. And what happens is they get into trouble, and they get into credit trouble, and they're like, I put on my credit card. And
Hmm.
man, that's why we're in so much trouble in this country and many other countries, is because we think we could put stuff on our credit card and it'll be fine. No, you got to pay it back, and you probably have to pay more.
Oh, you pay way more, way
Way more.
more. And you'd be amazed. Well, maybe you wouldn't, at the number of clients that I have. One of the first things that I do is talk to you about money. I mean, if you're hiring me as a business coach, you probably want to make more money. And of course, it's an
Mm,
investment in, you don't want to think about coaches cost you money. You want to think about as an investment, which hopefully,
mhm.
of course, will pay off. And a remarkably large number of clients don't have a good handle on their finances at all, which I didn't when I started out either. You
Mm.
know, I didn't have, I don't do a lot of with business plans, as it were, but it's good to know, well, how much do things cost and how much is coming in? Because
Mhm.
otherwise you always feel on the back end of not ever quite getting there.
Right.
And it turns you into survival mode very quickly.
You said something that I think there's a jet flying over me. I don't know if you hear it. You said something that a lot of people don't even get a coach because they believe it costs too much. And my saying is, it's going to cost you more if you don't get a coach. It's going to cost you a lot more, because a coach can show you how, especially one like yourself, can show you why you do certain things and how to do certain things. They're not going to do it for you. They're going to guide you, and it's up to you to do it. And I think a lot of people, they put the value in the wrong area. And you
Mm.
said it's an investment, and I agree 1,000%. Just like if you invest in a stock, you don't just throw money in it. Oh, let's say you put money under your mattress, it's actually hurting. You
Mm.
invested, and yeah, there is a chance. It's a little bit of a gamble, but I think if you go with the right coach, it's not a gamble. It's a sure thing, especially if your coach is constantly helping you. And but if you don't do what your coach is telling you, then that is a big gamble. Because I think that we as coaches want clients who want to do the work. I personally don't want any client who wants me to do all the work, because
I
that's not
can't.
the right that's not the right client, and they will never succeed because they have to do the work themselves.
Yeah, people will sometimes ask me, and do you think I'm a good fit? Or they want to know how I'm going to help them, and I'll say,
Right.
well, you have to know that your results are my results. So if you do well, I'm doing well. But two
Mm,
examples I have of how a coach would help. So one client that I had was doing something regarding helping people establish gardens in their backyards rather than lawns, that they establish
mhm,
gardens. And uh, without talking to me about it, she's allowed to do whatever she wants to do, but she did not bring this up beforehand. She had a roofer friend who said, yeah, I get all my business by sending mailers in postcards. And so she
mm,
invested about $2,000 in these mailers. And if she had asked me, I definitely would have told her no. I don't know what the story was that she didn't talk to me about it beforehand. Maybe there was a little gap or something in her. Anyway, it was a complete flop. So
mm.
she got one client for $200 out of it. Okay. And it was quite frustrating for her because she was hoping for, and that, by the way, the side note on that is the classic guaranteed to create results kind of a,
Right.
Maybe it works better for roofers than gardeners. Who
Mm,
knows? And the other thing is, we don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars that man might have spent until he finally got a result.
right.
So anyway, so that cost her money because she didn't talk to me about it. I would have definitely told her not to do it. And I've often told people not to do things like that. But I have another client who recently, this is actually a relatively new client, and her line of work involves the ability to charge a significant amount of money a month. And so she came to me and she said, well, I'm thinking about charging this client $25,000 a month. And by the way, that includes, she has to put all her expenses, like her travel and everything, under that. And
Right.
so after one of the coaching calls we had, I said, I don't know, $25,000 for what you're talking about seems low. And she ended up asking for $40,000, and she made that additional $15,000 a month
Mm,
because we had that conversation. Now that's I don't like to bring up those spectacular examples because everybody's like, well, I could make $40,000 a month. She was in a specific situation that had that be possible for her. But my point is that she came onto that call saying 25 and she got off saying 40 and made a lot more money. That was worth coaching.
absolutely. Well, you showed her value and what she's worth. And a lot of people, even high-end coaches, don't always think that they're worth more. But meanwhile, when we look at everything and you look at all that she was bringing, she was definitely worth 40 and the client was happy to pay it. Now, if the client was not happy to pay it, she wouldn't have gotten him. She may
Right.
have been able to ask for 45. But
Right.
we also have to find that happy medium where we go, you know what? If I get 10 clients that are going to say 40 is good, then maybe now it's time to ask for 45 for the next ones. So this is also testing the market a little bit, right?
100%. Yeah. And like, let's say she had gone and said 40 and he said no, she could have said 35. Still more than 25, first of all.
For sure.
Pricing yourself is a big struggle for people. And it's because there's a lot of people. There are coaches that charge way more than I do. And there's also
Mm,
ones that charge less.
right.
And so my level is where I feel it's the sweet spot for me. So it's important to find that sweet spot, but it's usually higher than you think.
Uh, I'm going to tell you about a coach I met once. He charged $7 a week. And they had his cell number, and he had a good number of clients. And I'm like, if you're that good and you have that many clients, why are you worth so little? And he kept thinking about it. He's like, because I want to give them. It's not about the money. I said, okay, so then go get a different job and then help those people for free. He's like, well, no, my time. I'm like, yeah, right. I said, your time is worth more. And he had to spend because he used to text those clients every morning. He would give them action steps. And I'm like, man, you have any idea how much you're worth? What you're doing for each one of your clients? He didn't want to hear it. So I said, okay, have a good life. But here's the thing, right? I want to know about you a little more. You mentioned that you started a business and your grandma gave you $500. What was the vision for that business and why did it fail?
Really great question. So, and I've done a lot of personal reflection on this as I
And
look
how
back.
old were you? And how old were you?
I was 23, 22. I had just graduated from college,
Mm,
and I was a photography major in college. I went, my mother and father were very supportive of my art and the things I was doing. And I had a beautiful portfolio and even had a job opportunity. And all the fear that I did not recognize at the time, all the fear
mm,
that came up. And it was one of those chance that's not chance things where literally in one of the last weeks of school, we were sitting out on the um, lawn, as you do when you're in college in your last weeks. And I was reading the
Right.
paper. In the back of it was an ad for a rental space in a local shop in South Norwalk, Connecticut. And it said, looking for artisans to rent this space. And I got this idea like down from the heavens. Oh, I could open a store selling all of the things, all of the products that we had on the farm. Now, at that point, 22 years old, I've been there a few years. We had quite an extensive product line, and we had a lot of exposure. We had TV and newspaper and a lot of exposure in the Pittsburgh area. And I opened this store for my mom, with and for my mom. And the idea behind it was, I'm going to sell those products. And if I were doing it now, boy, opening a little retail store and a craft, this is like a whole thing. I just know so much more than I did then. At the time, I really didn't know anything. But the true thing was, it really wasn't me. It wasn't for me. It was me doing my best to help my mother make more money. And it was, we sold a lot of stuff. It wasn't like we didn't, but my heart was not in it. And then I didn't know anything about marketing. Of course, this is back when you put ads in the newspaper. I didn't know anything about marketing. I worked hard at it, but it was not, turned out not to be a financial. I had to pay that rent it would be so much different today because of social media. And, you see the TikTok videos of people on the farms and the cute sheep, and, would have been a lot different. But at the end of the day, I didn't know how to make it work. And I basically was so tired that I was just like, just give me the dopiest job that's out there. I think I went and got a waitress job for the summer just to figure out what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Well. So you obviously closed that business down and you went to become a waitress. What were your thoughts when you had to help people as a waitress and you're thinking, I got to do something different. I can't just help people. And some of them are very nice, I'm sure, and some of them were rude and nasty. But overall, you're on your feet all day, basically, whatever your shift was. And you're working basically for tips. So it didn't matter how well you performed, how well you served those people. If they were cheap, if they didn't know how to tip, maybe they didn't know how to. I don't always say that people who don't tip are cheap. Maybe they don't know about tipping, right? Because there's certain places people they don't think, hey, you know what? You're getting paid by the boss. I'm paying for my meal. Why should you tip me? So a lot of people don't understand the value of tipping. I'm probably one of the best tippers around. Anytime I walk into a restaurant, I could have not been there for 6 months. They're like, hey, how you doing, Rafael? They know my name. So they always know who I am. And because I value the service and what they do. So, and it's very funny. I recently went to a restaurant I had not been to since before COVID. And I just never got around to it. And I went and I went with my son and they were like, hey, welcome back, because they remembered me. And of course, my son goes, Dad, how do they know you so well? I said, because I treat them right. And it wasn't just one person. It was because I've had all the waiters, right? And they're all like, hey, how are you? And so I said, it's because of the way I treat people. And I said, so that don't take that lightly. I need you to treat people nicely too. So one day when my son was younger, he wanted to get some cheeseburgers or something. So I said, here's the money, go get it. And he comes back and it was like it was It was a fancy, well, actually not fancy, but it was a very old-fashioned style burger joint. And there's always lines to this. It's not a McDonald's, it's not a burger, it's not one of those franchise places. This place has been there since like 1950 or something, and they're just good. And my son comes back and I go, "Where's the change?" He goes, "Oh, I gave the rest of it to the person that served me." And I'm like, "Really?" I said, "That's
Mm.
very nice." I said, "That's really nice." I said, "Next time do it with your money." And he goes, "Oh, I get it." I said, "That was very nice that you gave him a tip with my money. Next time use yours." But he understood. So the way we treat people makes a huge difference.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, it is interesting because what I remember most from that period of time was that I didn't have purpose, really. I
Mm,
didn't have purpose. I had started this, well, I first of all, I was this photographer and I never pursued that. Why?
mm,
Fear. Fear and
right.
lack of knowledge. I think those are the two big things that stop
Mm,
people. They don't know how to do it. I hear that all the time from people who want to start a business, don't know how to do it. And they're afraid. They're afraid it's going to be a failure. And of course, I didn't want to disappoint my mother. And, there was all emotions with that.
yeah,
And
of
then
course.
the other big interest I had was in music. And so I thought, oh, let me come to New York City. So I was in Connecticut. And so I said, okay, I'm going to come down to New York City and I'm going to pursue music. And serendipitously, the first job that I got in New York City was at the Manhattan School of Music. And
Oh,
by the
nice.
way, my salary was $14,000 a year.
Mm,
Uh, 1987-ish or 88-ish. Okay. So I had music teachers, I had voice teachers that told me, yep, you've got what it takes. Your voice is great. You've got what it takes. Again, fear and not knowing how to pursue it
mm,
led me down a different path. So I noticed now in retrospect a pattern of feeling like I'm actually really good at this. I'm actually really good at sales. I'm actually really good at photography. I'm actually really good at music. And then being like, oh, let me go do, and then I would have a little excuse of, well, that didn't work out for this reason. And then I would go in another direction.
mm,
And I had to keep doing that until I saw the pattern, which I could then go back to my whole life and see, oh, and I did that then, and I did that then, and I did that then, and I see how fear just there's actually something about being really good at something that's
right.
fearful, that
Mhm,
can be hard. So when in the now early 90s, when this is when technology was really taking
starting to
shape,
come up, yeah.
yeah, where people needed people to show them how to use technology and CRM software and those kinds of things. And so I found my niche with, I was again very good with new people that are new at things. And I did a lot of computer training and consulting, and that was both satisfying to me as well
Mm,
as lucrative, because you could charge $100 an hour. For me, that was
right.
like $14,000 a year. That was a huge jump.
Mhm. Without a doubt, without a doubt. So you went into technology but eventually you're at the school. You're helping people with technology. What prompted you to say, I need to become different type of coach? Because you're already helping people.
Right.
What was the catalyst, if you will? What was that moment in time that you said, this is really what I want? Because you're already helping people in
Mm-hmm.
one area, but then you said there's something really. What triggered it for you?
A couple things. One is that I realized that the joy that I got out of training anybody on any kind of computer system was the actual impact it had on their lives. This may sound crazy to some of you younger folks that are listening right now, but Excel was really scary. And some
Mm,
people's jobs depended on them knowing how to use it when the companies rolled out Microsoft Office. And then they said, you're not going to do spreadsheets by hand anymore. You're going to do them in this. And they would be like, I'm going to lose my job if I don't know how to do this. And it really, when the understanding came over them, I loved doing classes like that, where people, we would have fun. And at the same time, they literally made their lives better. The only
Right.
thing is that after, first of all, over the years, I mean, I did that. I worked at, I had a couple of clients for 20 years doing that kind of work. And it did get repetitive after a while, the technology part, as well
Mhm.
as the fact that, you know, as people did learn it, let's say in college, or they came into these jobs and they didn't need it as much, kind of thing. And
Right.
so it became more about the technology than the transformation. And
Mm.
the second thing that happened was I took some personal development workshops and about leadership trainings. And I volunteered in those programs to be a coach. And that was really fun because that really made a difference for people. So I saw that that kind of coaching, because business coaching is often about, okay, what are the steps that I need to do? Because and if you listen to any free webinar that's selling a coaching program, you will hear the words step by step process. Everybody
Mhm.
wants to share what their step by step process is because everybody wants to know, if I just take these steps, then I will be successful, because that's completely ignoring the fact that if your mindset is not straight when you're doing this work,
That
you
ain't
can,
working.
it's, what's the difference between $25,000 a month and $40,000 a month? It isn't
Mm.
knowledge, it's mindset. It's,
Yeah.
can I even ask for that much? What's going to happen? That's bold. That's
Am
big.
I worthy? Yeah,
Am I
absolutely.
worthy? Which, by the way, is a really dopey way to decide how much to charge. Am I worthy? No one is sitting on the other side of that going, well, I'll give, you know what, let me give Liz $5,000 a month. That's not my price, but, you know, let me give her five because she deserves it. She's such a nice person. That people are not doing that. Okay.
No,
They look at it and go, is this person going to solve my problem? And if they are, how much is that worth to me? Not to you,
correct. Yeah.
right?
No, but I'm saying you have to believe in yourself. Am I worthy? What am I providing is going to give the other person value? Absolutely. Because you're right. Listen, if we're all drinking water, but 30 years ago, we were not buying water, not as much as we are today, right? And now you have all different kinds of companies coming out with water, flavored water, all these high expensive waters. But it's, what do you value yourself? Then that's where you put the money in, right? If if you buy a car that costs $20,000 or you buy a car that costs $300,000, why? It's because the value you put on yourself, the value you put on what maybe it represents to you. So I have all kinds of clients. I have clients that have several Lamborghinis and Maseratis, and it's funny because sometimes I see them, I go, "Which car are you driving today?" So, and then other ones, they're driving cars that are like any day they're gonna have to like take it to the repair shop because that you hear it coming. But each one has different values that they put on themselves. Some people don't feel they're worthy of getting that new car. They don't think they're worthy of asking for that raise. And I know that what you do is you help people understand their worth, just like you did with this woman who only wanted to charge 25. And once she got off the call with you, she was worth $15,000 more per month. And when you add that, not just for one client, but what if she had 20 new clients that way? That's huge.
And that enabled her to quit her job, by the way.
Mm, there you go.
So that was another impact. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important to distinguish value, the three words that you hear a lot around this
Mm,
topic. value, worth, and deserving.
Mm.
Okay, so I tend to stick more when coaching people is to think of on the level of value. Value is still up to interpretation. Okay, so it's not valuable to me to own a Lamborghini. I park on the streets of New York City. I have a pretty nice Subaru Forester 2017. Love it. You know, sometime yesterday a BMW cut me off, and I'm thinking to myself, hey dude, your car, you care more about your car than I do. Like, cut me off, I'm gonna hit you. You know, I got a Subaru, you got a BMW, right?
Right, right.
So what do you value? Okay, that's where people make buying decisions from.
Mm.
Okay, now the thing about worth is then a question comes up. I value that, so it's worth it to me to buy that. I value the coaching. I value the expertise that this coach has. So it's worth it to me to invest that. So those two words can be somewhat interchangeable. Now, let's flip it the other side, which is from a personal side. What people tend to do is they'll say, well, I'm worth it, or I deserve it. And I actually stay away from the phrase, I deserve it. And I'll tell you why. Because it's a justification. Well, I'm going to charge $40,000 a month because I'm worth it, or I deserve to have more abundance in my life. And people, that's why I'm saying people aren't buying from you because they think you deserve it. And the problem with standing in front of a mirror and giving that affirmation saying, I deserve it, or I am worthy. And if you listen to any of these meditation apps and you listen to any affirmations, they all say it. And every time they do, I roll my eyes a little bit because I don't need justification to say, I'm allowed to charge whatever I want. I don't even have to be any good. Because there are a lot of coaches out there who charge whatever they want.
There's a lot of coaches out there.
And so that's not why people are going to buy from you, because you deserve it. So the other thing is like, what if you have a bad day and you think, oh, I don't really deserve that. Now you're not charging 40,000, So I just want to take that out of the mix. You don't have to justify anything. You don't need to deserve it. It's not about deserving it. It's because that's very inward focused. And I want you to say, how can I contribute to this person, whatever you're selling or whatever. And as soon as you take the focus off, I deserve it and therefore I should, and instead focus it more on, well, what's the problem they're talking about here and can I solve it for them? It's a more authentic, honest way, and they will relate to you better. And then you don't have to justify it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything you've been talking about. And I'm going to share this with you in a sec. It's a little plug for our April 5th, because everything you're talking about is communication, the words we use and how we use them and the impact they make on us. So take a look.
Welcome to Speaking Prowess, where we believe in the power of communication to transform lives. If you're ready to take your communication skills to the next level, then mark your calendars for April 5th, because we've got something special for you. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. At Speaking Prowess, our mission is clear: to empower you through effective communication. We know that mastering the art of communication isn't just about what you say. It's about how you say it and the impact it has on every aspect of your life. So take action now. Join us on April 5th and unlock your full speaking potential. Reserve your spot today and get ready to embark on a journey towards personal and professional growth. See you at the masterclass on April 5th.
And that's what we're working on.
That's great.
Definitely the words we use, even when we speak to ourselves. And I was talking about that earlier in a previous show I was doing, about the words you say to yourself and the impact they have on you. So that's why I was asking you earlier when you were as working as a waitress, what were you saying to yourself that made you say, I can't do this anymore? I need to elevate myself, right?
Well, there's definitely a level of tolerance that people have for
Mm,
situations that are not a match for them. People stay in jobs a very long time that they don't like. They keep clients that they don't like. They do. I have another client that just shared with me that he had taken on this project, and why? Because he it came available to him, and it really wasn't a match for his skills, and it wasn't like he didn't have other work, but he had, sometimes we just don't want to turn things down. So it's not a match, and the problem with those situations is that you do spend a lot of time in the experience of negative self-talk, not just about yourself but about other people or about the situation. This is really stupid, I don't like it.
mm,
um, it's my own son graduated college, game design major, went out to California to live with his girlfriend, fully supported, great. Got a job at Walmart in the custodial staff. Okay. Not every mother's dream that they just spent, $80,000 for their kid to get a
right.
college education and go work at Walmart. But I appreciated his effort. And it was such a crappy job, literally a
Mm,
crappy job, that he just, he started being like depressed about it. It was just
mm,
drag, and turned out he didn't have to work there anymore, which is great. Now he's also looking for a job, just in case anybody has one. And so uh, the we have no idea of the impact of the power of our own self-talk, not just about ourselves and
mm,
questioning. We're just constantly questioning ourselves. I don't know. Is that the right decision? Should I
right.
do that? Should I not do it? Am I good enough for that? I don't know. What if he rejects me? What? Blah blah blah. Like, it's just a and when we listen to it, we're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, that's a good question. It's not a good question. Stop asking questions.
What like with your son, sometimes, and one of the things that I always tell people is that you can wish someone would listen to you. You just can't make them listen to you. And so therefore, it's sometimes they need to hit that spot that they get miserable, or they're not succeeding, and then maybe they'll turn around and go, okay, now I'm ready to listen. And sometimes they're not ready to listen because they feel like they need to do it themselves. They need to figure it out. So yeah, maybe he got a crappy job, and maybe he realized, oh man, and now he's no longer there, but he is looking for a job, and I'm sure he doesn't want to do the same thing. So maybe he's looking for the right opportunity. And with in life, we always have to look for that, because sometimes, and sometimes opportunity may be dressed in overalls, right? And sometimes it may be dressed in a fine suit or a dress. But we need to always be looking. So I'm always encouraging young people to, you never know where opportunity is going to be. You never know. So if you're digging, you're digging, you're digging, don't stop digging. Eventually you may hit gold. The minute you stop digging and you walk away, someone else is going to dig there and they're going to find the gold. And then
Well,
also sometimes you got to say, hey, you know what? I've dug here forever, and
mhm.
I can find gold over there. So maybe let me go dig over there instead. So it's always about seeing those opportunities, including with your son, my kids as well. I have a 19 and a 22-year-old. They're finding their own ways. But did they always listen to me? No. But one of the things I always say to them is, whatever you choose in life, I love you. I love you. And I will always love you. And if you need my support, I don't care what time of the day or what day it is, I'm there. I'm there. and they know that. And my son called me when he was going for a job interview. And I said, well, what are you going to say? I'm just going to walk in. I'm like, say it like I'm the boss. And he said it to me. I'm like, oh man. I said, thank you. We'll give you a call. He's like, I didn't get the job. I'm like, not the way you asked. So
Mm.
I practiced with him. And half hour, I said, say it again, say it again, say it like this, say it like that. Let's fix this, let's do that. He called me. He got the job. He goes, Dad, they love me. I said, I know they would. You just have to know how to get them to love you because they don't know you. So how could they even love you? And just the other day he called me. He goes, Dad, I'm having a great time at my job. I'm learning so much. Da 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 da. And I was like, there you go. And so he at another time he reached out and he said, Dad, I wanna I was stressing, I had anxiety. So thank you for taking the time. I'm like, I told you anytime.
Mm.
But whether that was my son or if that was a client, which I've had clients, I've helped clients land some big jobs as well, because it's the way we communicate. And I think that's one of the most important things is the way we communicate with ourselves, but then the way we express ourselves to others so they can see what we can bring. Right. And my son started going in that particular job interview telling them, you know, how good he was. I was like, nah, they're not gonna look, they're not gonna buy how good you are. What they're gonna buy is how you can help them. That's the deal. And
How
so
can you?
that's how it helped him get there, right?
Yeah, which is the same for when you're selling to a client.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm so blessed that my son wants to talk to me, and so every
That's great.
yeah, we have a weekly Zoom meeting where he just gets on and we talk about things he's doing and what he's
Nice.
up to, helping him and coaching him. And he said, yesterday I walked around in this neighborhood and I went to every single store and I asked them. I said, and I'm just picturing him doing that, and that was risky. That was putting yourself out there.
Takes courage.
I said, what did you wear? He said, I wore a hoodie, whatever. I said, next
Hmm.
time wear a button down shirt and pants and you'll be a little hotter. It's California, it's a little warmer. I said, but people know you're serious. And he went, fair enough. Like there was a time that he would have said, no, mom, nobody's looking at my clothes. But not a snarky kid, but he was said, fair enough. But unless you go and do that and get in there, you and then that was the thing is I provided that other perspective to him of, listen, from my side of the street, if you showed up at my door with a button down shirt and a neatly printed resume, I'm going to take you more seriously than you're just shuffling around and, in your hoodie and kind of mumbling. Right. So
Yeah.
it does take some practice. It does learning, for sure. And what is the biggest reason that we would not pursue something is because we're going to talk ourselves out of it.
Mm.
And what a
Mm.
sad thing, because the world is a better place when we're all doing things that are enjoyable and fulfilling.
Mhm. And Liz, one of the things that I believe, and even for obviously for younger people, I think one of the things, and we as adults kind of talk about it more openly because we've come head on with it. But a lot of people, and I've noticed a lot of young people nowadays, they have so much anxiety and
Mhm.
fear of failure, fear of not being accepted because there's some generation. I don't see kids as a generation. I see them as a new opportunity for me to help them grow. If I'm hiring somebody, which I have several businesses and I do, I don't want to. I don't want to hire somebody because of the way they look. I want to hire them because of what they bring to the table, right?
Absolutely.
If you come to the table and you just bring me an empty plate, wow, you expect me to fill it, huh? But
Yeah.
if you bring something on your plate and you say, "Hey, look, I have this, but I want to share some of it with you," then I'm like, yeah, let me share some of this other stuff with you. So a lot of times, I even tell my kids, I say, if you go to somebody's party, don't come empty-handed. Don't come empty-handed. Bring something. I don't care if it's a little trinket, a little something. I was thinking of you. Here you go. It could be, hey, you know what? I know that you're having a lot of people. Here's a case of water, just in case you run out. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's the thought. And I was teaching um, a bunch of people on gratitude, and I was teaching them how do you get a present, and you get a present that's not what you wanted, or you would never wear, because that's just not your style. How do you react? And I had them go through these different exercises, and a lot of them were like, I said, this is probably going to be your face, right? Oh, thanks. I really like that. And then your face, it tells so much. But when we consider the fact that somebody just thought of you and they actually gave you a gift, because they didn't have to give you anything, I think start with that. Start with gratitude. Wow, I am thrilled that you thought of me. Thank you for giving me this yarn. Cheap. Sheepishly
Right.
saying.
Yes, gratitude is a really wonderful place to bring up the energy that you have. I
Mhm.
would say that that is something that I, in that period of time when I left college and then was going through and seeing, okay, am I pursuing music? Am I going for technology? What am I doing? And one thing I've always been grateful for is, number one, the serendipity part, where what were the chances that I was going to get a job at a music school?
Mm.
Pretty low. What were the chances that while at the music school, I would learn Word Perfect? Remember Word Perfect? And
Mm.
I had because it was in college, they really didn't do anything in the summer. So I just sat there all summer and read that Word Perfect manual and learned it really, really well. And then I realized, oh, I can make more money. I was only making $7 or $8 an hour at the school. And I said, well, I could make $15 an hour if I go and do some temp work using Word Perfect. And it was in demand. I mean, I didn't imagine that. I didn't graduate from college and go, well, that's okay, because someday I'll be learning Word Perfect. And then I didn't know that because I was really good at reading manuals for technology programs like word processors and Excel, that I could translate that into a way that people could learn
Mm.
and teach that. And then interacting with people, meeting people, getting referrals, offering my services, always
Right.
in the service of how can I help? How can I help? And so then again, growing my business and engaging with more clients. I always like to say, I'm in it too as a coach. I'm not sitting golden over here like, oh, I never need to do marketing anymore,
Mm.
which by the way is everybody's dream, and it doesn't really come. Everybody does marketing.
Right.
Right. So there's all the investments in the coaching, all the investment in the time and learning, all of that. I'm in the middle of doing that too. And I'm doing that as I do it for myself. Then I'm also, of course, learning alongside my clients at the same time. And
Mhm.
that's definitely, I think, a very valuable thing. One of the things, imposter syndrome comes up a lot for people. And that's because they
Right.
think they're supposed to know more than they actually really need to know. You don't need to know more than that. You need to be willing to learn what you need to know. And
Mm.
as long as you know this much more than the person you're coaching,
That's it.
you're good.
That's what you need.
And that imposter syndrome goes back to our conversation about value. Why would I
Mm.
think I'm an imposter? Because I think I'm not bringing any value to this
Right.
conversation.
You know, I'm quite interested and thank you for sharing your story with us so much. Because it lets us know a little bit more about you, the way you think, and the accolades that you've had. But one of the things that I understand is that you started your business with your husband 25 years ago. And it's hard to understand that because you must have been 5 when you did it. So here's the thing, right? What propelled you at that time to say to your husband, and whose idea was it? Because you're a team, to go into the business coaching arena.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely my idea because although in the course of my up until then, so that was, I met him in 92. So up until then, I had had a job here and there. And even when I met him, I had a job, but they were almost more like freelance gigs. Like they never really, and it started when I got hired, it was A&E Television, as a matter of fact, it's my biggest client. When I started working for them, and then simultaneously, I was learning and training and implementing a CRM software called Maximizer, which is what we still do to this day. And Maximizer, being a CRM software, is a sales database that people use in small business. And at the time, my husband was a salesman for a company selling chemicals, trading chemicals. And they didn't have a CRM software. And he built one in Access. And I was just sitting there going, that is just dumb, because I know that you could just use Maximizer. And, he went through all this thing to build, which was very common in those days, to think, well, I'll just build one in-house. Right. And so I eventually showed him and proved to him, because he was using a CRM, but his own. I eventually was like, no, you should be doing this, because I was training people on how to use it and implement it. And the thing that kicked, us to him quitting was he had this boss that gave him his annual bonus 2 times a year. The first half was in March and the second half was in November. So you had to work almost a whole nother year to get your bonus.
Wow.
And I was like, rat race. I mean, come on, really? You're going to work another year for this guy? And I said, you should just quit and come and work with me. And I'm like, just quit and come work with me. Well, the first day, so he did, he quit, he thought about it, quit. And then I'll never forget, he used to wear a suit to work. This is like, in the 90s, he wore suits to work. The first day he got up and, I'm in, not sweats exactly, but, I'm in casual. And he comes out, he's got a button down on and a khaki. And I'm looking at him like, what are you doing? He said, well, I want to treat this like a real job. And I said, all right. And, he sat down and we had the phone. We had set it all up ahead of time. He sat down, he started making calls. And I said, here's the people to call. Oh, see ya, I'm out of here. And so he really got into selling and implementing Maximizer, which is the CRM software. And that's what we did he's still doing it. And then I eventually said, you can keep doing that. I'm going to do the business coaching part. Yes. Treated it like a job. You treat your business like a job, but without the vacation restrictions.
Wow. So it's very interesting. You made me think of 2 scenarios. One, I used to do interior design, architecture. I have a wood shop and all that stuff as well. And I was working for a guy. He took us out to Chinese. I was like, okay. And then he gave us all a card. And everybody's like, oh, wow, probably getting a big check. It was just a card. Thank you for your hard work this year. Like, wow. Meanwhile, we killed every project. We did so many amazing things. And then it made me think how grateful I was to that guy, because I heard of another guy similar company took his employees out to Chinese, and at the end, they all got individual checks. They had to pay for their own meal
Oh
for
my
their holiday party. So I'm like, which one did I want to, I'm glad I worked for. And I would have, I didn't work for that guy much longer, but the fact that, you take us out, I would have rather you would have said, hey, you know what, you can go home early today, then take me to a Chinese restaurant. And it was buffet style kind of thing. And I was like, really? And then just to get a card to say thank you, I was like, yeah, I think that's the last company I worked for.
Mm,
And that, it's very interesting when
yeah.
people don't treat you right, and what makes people leave. And it's the way they're treated, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a tactic for this man to have his employees work for almost a whole year. I don't even know if that's legal, to be honest, but he did it. And we went through like at least 2 cycles of that before I just said, you're going to have to I mean, I think the amount was significant for a young
Right.
married couple, $5,000 or something. So
Right.
I said, you're just going to have to let that go. You're
Mm,
just going to and you're not going to get next year's bonus. But you have all this opportunity because you've let that go.
yeah. Yeah.
And we've certainly made way more money. And again, the freedom of working for ourselves. He did not have any entrepreneurial background in his family the way I did.
Mm,
And where I just like, I did not want to work for somebody.
yeah.
And he just didn't know, it was a thing.
Mm.
And now,
He would
it's
go back for sure.
never. I was talking to him one time. I was like, "What's the worst case scenario?" He's like, "Oh, go work for somebody else." We're both like, "Oh no," But that doesn't mean we don't work hard and uh, have a lot of obligations in our business. We definitely do. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that you took the time out, and I know how valuable your time is to come and be on the show and share with us. I am so grateful to you for coming, and I hope that you can join us on some of the other things and the other shows that I have going on. I just love your energy and that big smile you got going. It's amazing. So thank you again for being here today and sharing with us. Truly appreciate you.
Yes, I definitely will love what you're doing out there. Thank you too for being this torch of wisdom for people and providing this place for people to listen in. And I definitely, anybody who's out there, love to connect with you. Please reach out to me.
Yeah. What would you say before we log off, um, for someone who is struggling with even the thought of, should I get a coach?
The thought of hiring a coach.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, you always have to ask first and foremost, what's your resistance? What are your fears? What are you resisting? That's your
Mm,
first thing you have to ask. Um, which, by the way, is 95% of procrastination is actually resistance.
right.
And the second part is you have to be thinking about this is an investment in your business, in your life. It is not this isn't like money you're just throwing away. And you really have to think about how can you make this relationship the most valuable that it can be. So what are you ready to put into that relationship? That's the real question when you're hiring a coach. Am I ready to put the effort in to
Mm,
this?
yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Have yourself an exceptional rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you so much.
You got it.